Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via live stream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbprou.com.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, and excited to be with you once again on Tuesday evening. As you know, your business can only go as far as you're prepared to take it. So what this show is all about is helping you to become a better leader by learning from other successful leaders in the small business arena, because that's the best way to learn how to move your organization forward faster and easier. So we have great guests. We try and have a different topic every week that's relevant to you as an entrepreneur and business owner, and always appreciate you tuning in. Definitely feel free to comment, ask questions. If you can, always like to know where people are joining us from. So if you want to put in the chat where you're joining us from, that would be great. And really looking forward to our show tonight. Today, we're going to talk about lessons learned creating an 8-figure lawn care business. Bryan Clayton's our guest. He's actually did that, which is amazing, because when you think of lawn care, very few times will you think of 8 figures. A lot of times you don't even think of 7 figures. So this gentleman has done it and is doing some great things. So I'm excited that he's on the show tonight. So let me bring him on so you can meet him. Hey, Bryan, how you doing tonight?
Andrew, good to be with you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to have you. Always appreciate having people who aren't just talking about stuff, but who have done stuff that they're talking about. So you've definitely accomplished that. And I'm really looking forward to learning myself some of the lessons that you've learned and sharing them with our audience.
Awesome.
Excellent. So before we get started, it would be great to hear a little bit about your story. How did you start out? How did you get where you are now? And where are you now? And what are you doing now?
Yeah, so today I'm founder of a company called GreenPal. GreenPal is a app that works like DoorDash or Instacart or Uber, but for lawn care services. So anywhere in the United States, if you need a lawn mowing service, you just download GreenPal and someone comes out and takes care of your lawn mowing for you. And it has about 300,000 people using it every week to get grass cutting. And I've been at this for about 10 years. And before that, I had a landscaping business that I started when I was a kid in high school. I started mowing grass in my neighborhood when I was a teenager. And a lot of people get started, that's their first business, is a lawn mowing business. I hear that all the time. It's like, oh yeah, that was my first business. It was mine too, but I just kind of stuck with it. And I stuck with that lawn mowing business through high school and college. And then when I graduated business school, I made a little business plan and started working on building a real business in that industry, and eventually getting it to around 150 employees. And like you mentioned earlier, getting it over $10 million a year in sales. And then about 15 years into that journey, it was acquired by a national company that operates these types of landscaping businesses all over the country. And so So growing that business just from me and a push mower to me and 90 crews going out every day, I learned a little bit about how to grow and scale a small business.
Excellent, excellent. So, definitely, I started out as a paper boy. Starting early is always a great experience because you learn so much about life through business. Um, what were some of the key lessons you learned when you were young in business? What are some of the key things that stuck out that you learned as a result?
Yeah, I think probably the best personal development thing you can do with your life is to start a business, because the business is the marketplace is the purveyor of all of this unvarnished feedback. The market doesn't care who you are, where you're from, what your background is. All the market cares about is, are you solving a problem for your customers? And so it's going to always be giving you this feedback. And so for me, it was a great way to kind of develop as a businessman, develop as a person, because the marketplace was always giving me feedback as to what I was doing well, what I wasn't doing so well. And so for me, it was like almost like a video game, one level at a time, and every level had its own unique challenges, and you just kind of worked through every level. And in the early days, it was very much around who I was as a person. Was I good at customer service? Was I a good person to work for? Was I a proactive person? Was I and if I wasn't, I better develop those skills. And so there was a lot of personal development that went into growing that business. And that's one of the cool things about a lawn mowing business or any kind of home services business, is you can learn 70-80% of what goes into any business by starting one of those simple types of companies. And so I learned things around how do I study the bookkeeping and the numbers and the economics of the business to know that I'm making money on the services I'm selling, and how do I become the type of leader, the type of person that somebody would want to work for and stay working for. And so those were a lot of the key lessons that I learned in kind of level one of the game, maybe level two of the game. And then as time went on, I realized that I actually wasn't in the landscaping business at all. I was in the sales business. I had to figure out a way to build a sales engine at the core of this little company to get it to 3, 4, 5 million a year and eventually 10 million a year. Was really working on the sales process. And yeah, the landscaping services, all of that mattered, but what really mattered was the sales engine. And that was a big unlock. That was a big key learning.
Excellent, excellent. So, yeah, I mean, definitely, landscaping business, paper business, all these businesses that seem like they're simple, you do everything that every other business does. And you learn some tremendous things. And, probably the other thing that's great, if you do it when you're young, you don't really have like an ego or anything. So it's easier for you to learn.
Yeah, totally. Oh.
So that's cool. So I look forward to digging into this. But before we do that, we do the show through as in one of our brain trust initiatives through the Small Business Pro University. So I just want to take a minute to share a short video about the university, and then we'll come back talking small business and really talk with Bryan a lot more about his experience. Many small businesses experience low or no revenue growth, and the owners are not making enough money. I founded Small Business Pro University to help you break that cycle by empowering you with greater knowledge and enhanced skills to lead your organization more effectively. Over the past 15 years, I've collaborated with organizations like the Small Business Development Center, Rising Tide Capital, Empower the Village, NJMEP, Rutgers University, and SCORE to work one-on-one with over 1,000 business owners and teach tens of thousands of people about business. My experience includes serving as a naval officer, managing businesses, graduating from MIT, earning an MBA from NYU, and achieving the CFA designation, which has prepared me to accomplish my mission of helping 1,000,008 business owners to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth by 2028. My vision is to create the ultimate business ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Small Business Pro University empowers entrepreneurs like you to run their businesses more professionally and create sustainable enterprises. We employ my proven proprietary Masterpreneur playbook framework to guide your journey along the Masterpreneur path and facilitate your Masterpreneur evolution to work on your business and scale faster and easier. Small Business Pro University provides access to valuable resources, partnerships, and relationships that will help you to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth. Our Masterpreneur initiatives include the Small Business Pro Network, 100+ expert-led multimedia courses, intensive training workshops, Spanish language training, Leadership Live at 8:05 live stream and podcast, in-person Power Breakfast events, and advisory coaching, consulting, and training services. Good evening. Welcome back to Leadership Live. I'm here with Bryan Clayton, talking small business. Our topic tonight is lessons learned in creating an 8-figure lawn care business. Definitely loved what you've done here, and it fits really well with we created at the university what we call the Masterpreneur growth journey, and basically it takes the key to going from startup to scaling your business in 5 key steps where, there's a path, and each step on the path, there's 5 steps, but also as a business owner, you have to evolve. So at each step you change and evolve to make it to the next level. So, given that, the first step is working on the concept of your business. How did you come up with this business? And what type of planning, or how did you get it started and get up to your first $10,000 in sales?
Yeah, it was very much, I think as you're going through building any business, what you're doing and why you're doing it, that can evolve, and it kind of has to. And so for me, like level 1 of the game was I needed a way to make extra cash. And I mean, I think that's why a lot of people get into a small business is they need a livelihood. And that's a great reason to get into business. And it keeps you focused on one thing: servicing customers, making customers happy, and making a small profit off of that. And that's how it was for me in the lawn care business. I needed a way to make extra cash. I went out and got 10, 20 customers, took care of them, and I was very much self-employed. And that is where a lot of new founders get stuck. They get stuck in self-employed land, and they don't ever break out of that. And so for me, I didn't really want to be self-employed. After I graduated business school, I made a decision. I didn't really want to be a lawn guy my whole life. I wanted to own a business. And so I made a plan to transition from being self-employed to owning a business. And I figured I could do it in 5 years. And it ended up taking me about that long. And you really don't own a business until you can step away from it and it grow without you. And you can step away for a month or 2 months, and you come back and it actually is doing better. And the way you do that is you look for ways to build systems, processes around the things that you're doing. And so for me in the lawn care business, it was very much me mowing grass. And then after a few years, I would get 2 or 3 people to help me mow grass. And then after that, I figured, okay, well, I have to figure out a way to get out of the truck, so to speak, and get off of the lawnmower and get people to do the service for me. And then I can go sell the services and manage the economics around that. And so there was kind of like a period of time where I had one foot in each role, where I did recruit somebody to run one truck, one crew, and then I would run another crew. And then I would do sales calls and bookkeeping and customer service while sitting in the truck looking at them mowing yards. And so I had one crew on one side of town. I was on the other side of town managing them. And then I got those guys kind of groomed and got them brought up to speed to where they could work on their own. And then I did it a third time, fourth time, fifth time. It wasn't until I had 5 crews all over Nashville, Tennessee, that I then stepped out and did not mow yards anymore. And so it was me back at the office, 5 of these crews going out every day. And it was very much like, once I figured out the first crew, it was multiplication. I knew that, okay, these were the types of customers I needed to get. This was the type of equipment I needed to get. This was how I would train employees. This is how I would keep employees. This is how I would handle bookkeeping and billing and cash flow management. And I was very, very able to kind of grow step by step in that business. And then as time went on, we started layering in other services like landscaping installation and irrigation systems and all of these other things. But it very much started off with a simple customer need. We solved that problem, and then I built a business around that. And so if you can kind of get one foot in the door and then keep one foot in the business and one foot on the business, and do those at the same time for a while, you can then transition into owning a business and not being self-employed.
Definitely great point. Definitely at each step in the business, there's things that you have to do. And, at the first step, the key is to, find your products and services, find who you're going to sell it to. You may have employees, but it's about problem solving, finding the problem that your business is going to solve for people. And the simpler, the better. How hard was it to sell lawn care back in the day?
Yeah, you better start with a problem that customers have and work out from there. If you don't, life is going to be hard. A lot of times, new businesses are a business in search of a problem, and that's going to make it very challenging to build anything meaningful. And so for me, it wasn't necessarily, grass grows everywhere and somebody needs to mow it. And so there was a need for it. The challenge wasn't selling those services. The challenge was differentiating ourselves from everybody else doing the service, because the barriers to entry in the lawn mowing business are very low. And so you have a lot of competition. And so you have to figure out a way, after you kind of get some momentum going, maybe you get to level 2 of the game, is you start working on, okay, what is it that I do differently than my competition? And how do we out hustle our competition? And how do we, quite frankly, take care of our customers better than our competition is? And that was kind of the second or third level of the game for me, was, okay, now we have a little bit of a client base and we have a little bit of a reputation in the community. These are the things that we do different than our competition. And that is our competitive advantage. That is our value proposition. And the way to think about value proposition is, if I'm your ideal customer, why would I do business with you versus anybody else? And the answer to that question always should always start with because of X, Y, and Z. And so the way I thought about it was, okay, if I'm your ideal customer, I live in the neighborhoods where you're working, and I need somebody to mow my yard. Why should I choose your landscaping company over anybody else? Because we call you the day before to let you know we're coming, and because we follow up after we get done to make sure you're happy, and because we have these licenses that our competition doesn't have, and also because we make sure that if you're not happy, we have a 30-day money back guarantee. These were things that our customers, our competition wasn't doing.
Okay.
The answer to that question should never be because we wear uniforms, or because we clean our trucks, or because we make sure the bookkeeping is done right. Those are not things that differentiate yourselves from your competition. So when I was running my landscaping company, I had to think about these things in terms of value proposition. And also with running GreenPal, I have to think about these things. What is it that we do differently than our competition? And that is the reason why somebody says yes to our services.
Okay. I mean, that was a great explanation, because, a lot of times people say, you need to know your value proposition, how you're differentiated, but don't really tell you how. I usually the X, Y, and Z. I usually just say you need 3 bullet points, and but definitely that was key. How far into your business did you realize that and put together your value proposition, and what was it initially?
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about value proposition, it can be helpful to literally put yourself in the customer's shoes and do business with yourself. Even maybe if you have staff, actually call the number and play play mystery shopper. And then you're going to learn what your value proposition is real quick. If you're at that level of the game. If you're not, then you kind of have to think through it and role play almost. And you have to really put yourself in the shoes of the customer and start from there. And so you ask yourself that question: if I am your ideal customer, why would I choose you over your competition? Because of this, this, and this. And it hit me in probably year 3 or 4 of running my little landscaping business, and was because we would price these jobs and we weren't winning them. We would just be running all over town, handing out estimates, and we weren't winning them. And I realized they're going with my competition because they're cheaper, or because they got there first, or because maybe they got there last. There could just be a number of factors as to why somebody chooses one company over another in the landscaping business. And so I knew I needed an intentional process for prospecting new customers, proposing work to customers, and differentiating myself from competitors to those customers. And it smacked me maybe year 3, and it was just because I was spinning my wheels and not winning new business. And then with building GreenPal, I was able to start day 1. And knew that there was no reason to build this product, GreenPal. There was no reason to build this platform if our experience wasn't going to be better than the status quo. And so that was one of the lessons that I took from the landscaping business to the tech world: was start with value proposition. What is it that you do different than the status quo? And then build from there. And if there isn't a big difference, then don't waste your time in that business.
All right. Excellent. So you sort of answered one of the questions that we had in the chat, but I want to just ask it anyways, because there might be something additional you want to share. What would you avoid if you were starting over today? And you did just started a newer business, so you used some lessons learned, but is there anything else that you would change or do differently?
Yeah. What would I avoid? I would avoid businesses where, like I mentioned, it is hard to differentiate yourself. So in a like a bricklayer or a framer, there's a lot of parallels in construction, because a lot of the construction trades are very commoditized. Landscaping can fall into this as well. So you really want to avoid businesses where everybody's kind of self-employed and you don't see any real money being made. There's a reason why not. There's a reason why you don't see big companies operating in those spaces. And so to use construction as an analogy, I wouldn't build a business that focused uh, on trash removal, or cleaning up of the site. I would build a business around the plumbing or the HVAC or the electrical. Because if you'll notice, there's a lot of big businesses that operate in those spaces. So I would break into a business that had that opportunity, that had that future, that I could run small and, quite frankly, run better than the big guys at a small level, create a competitive advantage, and then build out from there. So I would choose a business that had a lot of upside in it, and I would look for signals that there were successful players in that business already, and then I would look for ways to do it better than them, and to use new tools available like AI to flat out outserve my customers better than they were. And so what you want to do is you want to look for these business opportunities where the owners of these small businesses are running them the same way as they were in 2003. Why is it when I go to any kind of medical clinic, I got to fill out a stack of papers and a clipboard? That's just an example of you're looking for ways that people are operating like they're in the 1990s, and then that you can do more with less, and you can out hustle and outserve their competitors, you outserve their customers, and you can do it at a small level and then grow out from there. Construction is a really good analogy, because there's a lot of opportunities that are like that, where you can start small and then grow, particularly grow without having to take on a lot of debt. That's what I would look for. I would start with a way that I could out hustle my competitors, but they're doing really good. They have massive companies with 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 employees. And I know I can grow into that over a decade period of time.
Oh, that's a great point. One of the things that I've found is most entrepreneurs never ever reach their goals. And many times it's because what they're trying to do and their plan or strategy isn't a winning strategy to be able to achieve the goals that they have. So if you aren't in a business that can grow to achieve the goals that you will have, then you're sort of doomed from the start. So definitely, I think there's some really big takeaways in what you just shared there. So hopefully, just from the audience standpoint, and just for me thinking about businesses, helping businesses, very important to understand what the addressable market is. How big is the market and the potential for what you're doing. So excellent. So I got quite a few questions. So I'm gonna try and go through a few of them. One that's always interesting is transitioning from an owner operator to a CEO. That's one of the hardest steps there is. And it's kind of multiple steps, but was there a certain time that you were like, I need to do something different, or I need to take this to a new level, but I can't do it the way I'm doing it now? What was that point and the turning point in you first realizing that you needed to do it, but then also once you realized that it didn't happen overnight? So how were you able to make that happen?
Yeah, it's small business and big business is a full contact sport. It is 7 days a week. It is going to require every ounce of your soul to be successful in building a small business, and at every level. The person running the restaurant is not working any more less or harder or less hard than Mark Zuckerberg. every business at every level is really hard. And there's a founder somewhere that is pouring everything they've got into making that happen. And so for me, looking back 25 years running my landscaping company and now running GreenPal, there's like three buckets that you're working on at all times. So the first two we've all heard of. You're working in the business and you're working on the business. And so, like we talked about with my lawn mowing business, I was mowing grass, and then that was in the business, and then making sure I was getting paid for that work and mailing out invoices and uh, answering customer phone calls and dealing with customer complaints and all of that, working in the business. And then the second thing is working on the business. So what do my customers look like, and what are their needs, and where can I find more of them, and how do I prospect them and sell work to them in a repeatable way, building a sales system that's working on the business. Or how do I train employees? What is the repeatable lawn care university, I used to call it, for training employees? That's working on the business, and you have to set aside time to do that, or else you'll never become a business owner. You'll always be self-employed. And then the third bucket is working on yourself. Nobody teaches us how to be a small business owner. Nobody teaches us how to be a leader. Nobody teaches us how to be a good manager. And so you have to learn these skills. You have to pick up books. You have to take training. You have to go to conferences. You have to develop a repeatable process for how you're going to become a good salesperson, for how you're going to become a good leader. How are you going to become a good manager, somebody you would want to work for? How are you going to grow into that person? You have to be intentional and set aside time for that. So you're working on three things at once. You're in the business, on the business, and on yourself. And that's how you slowly transition from being a self-employed business operator to being a business owner and a CEO one day. I don't know when somebody magically becomes a CEO. Maybe it's when you start having investors and when you start having stakeholders and over 50 employees. But that's how you get to that kind of level, is you're working on those three buckets. And then as time goes on, you're not really working in the business that much anymore. You're spending all of your time working on the business and also working on yourself, cultivating your leadership style, cultivating the way you think about business strategy and business planning and all of these things. And so it's a beautiful journey that you can kind of go through as a small business owner, and you just have to work at one level at a time. The problem is people want to skip all of that, the first two buckets and go straight to the third one. And it just doesn't work that way. You have to grow and evolve through this. And it very much is like a 7-day-a-week thing. I saw a meme the other day. A lot of people get into businesses because they hate their job, or they feel like they're working really hard in their job, or they just hate spinning their wheels, in their current kind of life. And they want to get into a business because it'll be so much easier. Oh man, if I can just get a business going, my life will be so much better. And what they don't realize is, like, it's so much harder. I saw a meme the other day where it was the guy from the movie Oppenheimer, the actor that played Oppenheimer, and he is sitting in an armchair, naked, and he's like got this like very pensive look on his face, and underneath the meme it said, "Me about to crash out and just quit my job just to go start a coffee shop." And I'm looking at this meme and I'm like, the author of this meme thinks, or is selling the idea, that the transition from leaving your full-time job to a business owner running a coffee shop is one that is going to bring you peace and prosperity. And what they don't realize is that they're going to work 10 times as hard and make half the money running this damn coffee shop. And it's going to be 5 years before they get anything going, if they're lucky. And there are so many things they have no idea that sit around the corner employees and food inspectors and taxing authorities and licensing people and all this stuff. So it's just like, don't make that transition if you think it's going to be one that's going to make your life easier, because it's not. Now the upside's unlimited. The upside is uncapped, and that's why it's worth doing. But it is not one that is going to make your life full of peace or improve it in the short run.
Definitely, it takes time. You really talked about the path, and one of the reasons why I created Small Business Pro University is because historically there wasn't a lot of good places where you could find a lot of the key things you needed to know as a business owner. You had to pick and choose and hope that the information you're getting is accurate. But what we've done is with the Masterpreneur growth framework. Actually, I'm just going to walk through it because you sort of talked about it a little bit, but I just want to sort of show how it's really 5 steps. The first step is working on the concept, developing what your business is going to be. The second step, working in your business. And most businesses never successfully get beyond that step, because the third step, working on your business, requires you to evolve from an employee to a manager. And, being a manager takes different skills. And you were talking about how you had to analyze information and make things better. So you're continually improving it, but you can't improve things that you don't measure. So as a business owner, if you never get to that point, you're not going to be able to work on your business successfully. From there, once you optimize your business, the key is to work on the future of your business, develop your growth strategy. You talked about how you're growing. You did more vertical and horizontal integration to expand your business. And then the last part is scaling the business. And in each of those steps, there is basically, there's a certain goal that you need to have during that step. There's a certain challenge you have to overcome to make it through the step. And then there's certain leadership skill and a certain structure that you have to build to do it. So it is a framework. Most successful businesses go through those steps, maybe some faster than others. But you can't skip a step.
Totally.
You're gonna either get blow up and go out of business, or you just aren't going to get past a certain point. So definitely just wanted to share that because it matches exactly how you move forward. So let's take a look. We got a few more questions. It's always appreciate comments and questions from the audience. So I want to make sure we get to as many as we can. So let's take a look at KPIs. What KPIs mattered the most? Of course, your KPIs change over time, but what were some of the key measures that helped you understand what was going on with your business and give you the information you needed to move it forward more effectively?
Yeah, for me, running my landscaping company and running GreenPal, I try to really simplify the KPIs that we're tracking and focus on 1 or 2 at a time. Because the problem is that when it comes to KPIs, key performance indicators, you can kind of just get bogged down in spreadsheet land. You don't really know what to do to move any one number, so you don't do anything. That's the worst place to be. So for me, what's helped me with my first business and building GreenPal is I just focus on 1 or 2 really important KPIs and I focus everything I can on moving those numbers. And I don't worry about the output metrics. I worry about the input metrics. And so what I mean by that is KPI might be like sales this week. How or sales this month. What were last month's sales? That's a KPI. And it's like sales were up or sales were down. And it's like, okay, that's not good. Sales were down. We need to improve that KPI. Well, let's just go improve it. And it's like, what does that even mean? I don't worry about so the sales last month was an output metric KPI. What I'm worried about is the input metrics. And so the input metrics are, what are all the things that we're doing to drive sales? So it could be cold calls. It's like, okay, well, in my landscaping company, we had to cold call property managers, apartment managers, HOA managers, and we would track that as a KPI. How many of these people are we reaching out to every day? And for me, it was, when I was doing it, I tried to hit 20 a day. And when I had a salesperson doing it, they didn't have anything else on their plate. It was 30 a day. So I would track that KPI. Let's look at those call logs. Let's look at that spreadsheet. Let's look at that CRM and track that. And so you really want to focus on the input metrics, not the output metrics. And so for us at GreenPal KPI, a lot of people find us from the content we put out into the internet because people are looking for a lawn mowing service in their town. So if you're looking for a lawn mowing service in Indianapolis, Indiana, for example, we better be creating new, fresh content around that. And so that's a KPI that we track, is how much new content are we putting out, not how much signups did we get last week. That number is important, but it almost doesn't matter. What matters is the input metrics, not the output metrics.
Okay. No, it makes sense. Activity is something you can measure. Not always does it lead to the same results, but if you keep having the activity, eventually that should lead to better results. So now, one thing that we haven't said specifically, but I think it's important to communicate, especially given how you built an 8-figure lawn care business, is there's no 8 figures if you don't sell. So you sort of became a great salesperson, I would suspect, and built your sales organization. So talk a little bit about kind of how important sales are, how you learn to sell, and really what other business owners should know, might need to know about selling, because many business owners don't think it's their job to sell. So how would what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, for me, sales has always kind of been at the core of what I would attribute success in my first landscaping business and with GreenPal, is starting with the sales first. It's not important enough to work really hard on the business and not work really hard on the sales engine. So you have to do both at the same time. It's not enough to innovate on the product or service. You also have to innovate on how you're going to connect it with people. And you really kind of need to think that through first before even starting the business. Is how am I going to sell it? How am I going to connect it with people who are looking for what it is I'm buying or selling? And that needs to start with the founder, in my opinion. Like, you as the founder, or you might say, well, I'm introverted, I don't really like sales, so I'm going to pay somebody else to do it. That almost never works. And you kind of have to start by doing that yourself. You need to do the prospecting, do the pitching, do the presentations, do the closing, do the follow-up, do the retention. You have to do these things yourself for a period of time before you can delegate them to people to do for you. And a lot of new founders kind of get hung up on that, because being self-employed, you don't really, when you're employed, unless you're a salesperson, you don't have to sell at all. And then when you're self-employed, you kind of don't need to, you kind of wait for the phone to ring, which is not selling. And then if you have a business, the reason you were able to make the transition from self-employed to business was because you figured out the sales piece, and you figured out a way to repeatedly get more business, get more revenue into the business. And so it's that crucial. And for me, it's a combination of the work ethic and ambition to work a process. So to do the cold calls, or to do the marketing activities, to doesn't matter how you're connecting with customers. Could be on TikTok, could be on Instagram Reels, it could be could be on Facebook. You're grinding out those activities to make the phone ring, and then beyond that, studying the data around, okay, is this working or not? Okay, I'm doing X number of activities. Is it making the phone ring? And am I closing those deals? And having the discipline to work that process, and so to know how to do it, and then have the discipline to measure it, is what goes into driving a sales system. And it's really hard. And I would say that sales is more important than the product or service. You have to have both, but there's a reason why McDonald's is not the best burger, but they dominate the burger business. There's about 30 different burgers I would rather have than a McDonald's burger, but they have figured out the sales and the sales strategy better than Five Guys and than Whataburger and Shake Shack. And so sales does cure all, and sales trumps everything. And so you have to start with that if you're going to make it.
Definitely. And if you're not selling and continually selling more, you can't bring more people into your organization so that you can do higher level, more important things. So definitely sales is king. And I look at it as sales and marketing, because they go hand in hand, but they're not the same thing. We have a question here about branding. How important was branding in your business? And was it important early? I mean, a lot of times they say that your brand is you, especially when you're smaller, but how did brand impact your business, and how did it evolve over time?
Yeah, branding is a trap that a lot of new founders fall into, because it is important, but it's not important in the first 4 levels of the game. And so a lot of new founders they hear that branding is important, so they go start trying to create a personal brand or create a brand around the business. And so they think that means I got to get a nice logo design and, get a good website design. And website is important, particularly if it's an e-commerce business, but brand almost doesn't matter in the early days. The only thing you need to be thinking about as it relates to brand is making a promise to your customer and fulfilling that. And so for every happy customer you create, you're making a small deposit into the brand bank account, so to speak. And so a brand is a promise, and it's a promise that you make to the marketplace, and that you promise to fulfill your end of the bargain. And you promise, going back to McDonald's, McDonald's burgers suck, but at least it's the same burger in Hong Kong as it is in Indianapolis. It's like, when you see the golden arches, it's a promise that it's going to be at least a consistent mediocre burger. And that's a promise. That's what the brand is. It matters at McDonald's scale, but sub probably $1 million in revenue, it does not matter at all. And so you don't need to spend any time on brand in the first level 1 or 2 in the game. You just need to make sure you're making customers happy, and the brand will take care of itself in those early levels. And I made this mistake when I was starting GreenPal. We really thought that we needed to invest in brand, and we spent all of this money creating a theme and a mood for the customer experience and a customer mascot and all of this nonsense that did not matter at that level of the game. In the first, probably 100 grand, 500 grand, maybe even $1 million in revenue, only 2 things matter: creating a product or service and then getting people to buy that product or service. You need to be doing one of those two things. You don't need to be doing anything else. And so brand doesn't matter until probably $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year in revenue.
Great point. A lot of people waste a whole bunch of money on, ineffective sales and marketing strategies around branding. One of the things that I've found is, generally as a small business, you have to do the opposite of what a lot of large businesses do in terms of marketing successfully. So, it's hard to understand that because, most marketing is taught from a big business perspective. So when you hear about marketing, anybody who's gone to school for it was taught big business marketing and, how you do, from a large perspective. But, big businesses have different strengths than smaller businesses, and you have to go to your strengths. And, definitely, understanding that and understanding that you can't, compete head to head in terms of marketing and branding, but there's a lot of advantages you do have as a small business that you can take advantage of. So I got another question, which is always interesting, is how do you stay motivated during tough seasons? Can you share like one or more like tough periods that you went through business, because everybody goes through them, and how did you make it through?
Yeah, for me, running GreenPal, it has been a lot of ups and downs. It's in the way I look back and think about it is, I made a decision when I started GreenPal was that no matter what, I was going to work on my best idea for the next 10 years. And that was the decision I made. It was like a default. It was like, okay, no matter what, I'm just working on my best idea. And GreenPal was my best idea. I haven't had a better idea in a decade. And so I think having that conviction when you start your business, it's like the default is I'm going to grind on this thing. There is no other option. There is no hang it up and go get a job or close the business and start a different business. I think a lot of new founders never really get success because they have this FOMO and they go from idea to idea and they never really grind on one of them long enough to will it to existence. So I think having that conviction day one and say, no matter what, I'm burning the boats. I am going to grind on this thing for a decade can help clear up a lot of that FOMO. So that helps. And then the other thing is just knowing that it's never as good as you think and it's never as bad as you think. It's like the highs are never that high and the lows are never that low. And you will figure it out. You will get through it. And looking back in 25 years of business, building my landscaping company and building GreenPal, I every bad thing that ever happened to the business, I was glad that it happened 5 years later, or maybe even a year later, because that was the thing that caused me to take action and caused me to improve something about the business or caused me to fix something about the company that I was neglecting. And so a lot of times, these lows happen for you. They don't happen to you. So trying to reframe it that way, look, if heaven forbid we go through an economic meltdown in 2026 and our business revenue falls by 90%, that's going to suck. And I'm not going to have fun dealing with that, but there will be some good things that could come out of that. And so trying to reframe it can help, but also expecting it. Know that, when things are going smooth, that the life of a small business owner is a roller coaster, and just embracing that. That's going to happen.
Okay. And no, that's a great point. And, Keith also is change creates opportunity. So, even though it seems like it'll be difficult, if you're proactive, you're creative, you're flexible, you have the ability to overcome a lot of things and even come out better. A lot of businesses came out of COVID way better than they went in, but they adapted.
One thing I'll add is that the action cures all anxiety. So if you're anxious about something going wrong in the business, you're anxious that you have a shortfall in revenue, you're not going to be able to make payroll or something. Action cures that anxiety. So rolling up your sleeves, coming in on a Sunday and diving into the books and figuring out what went wrong where and how you're going to fix it. That action actually makes you feel better as a founder.
Okay, definitely. You're going to be proactive, not wait for things to happen, but make things happen. So an hour goes really fast, so we're bumping up on the hour, but just want to take a couple of minutes. Want to take the last question, if that's okay, because I think this is important. How do you hire the right people as your company grew? Because a lot of business owners make poor hiring decisions. What would you say are some of the key things to being able to make good hiring decisions?
Yeah, there's so many ways to do this wrong and very few ways to do it right. And so let's start with doing it wrong. Usually you do it wrong, and that's okay. If you hire 10 people, maybe one of them might be a good fit. The key is recognizing that and coming to the point of necessary ending quickly. When you make a bad hire, you know it within about the first week or two. The problem is that as a founder, and I've been guilty of this, we get lazy. We don't want to go through the process of getting somebody new. So we kind of suffer them for a long time, and until it gets so bad that we help them find another job somewhere else. And so hire fast and fire quicker is the first thing. When it's not working, figure out what you did wrong in the process, because everything is, as the founder, everything is your fault. So you screwed up somewhere in your interviewing process, in your prospecting process. You made a screw up somewhere. What did you not see? And then fix that, and then figure out how you're going to not repeat that mistake. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is you really got to figure, okay, especially your first 5 or 10 people, it's like, would you break bread with this person? Would you go to dinner with them? Would you want to hang out with them on the weekend? Because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. And so don't hire somebody that you wouldn't break bread with. You wouldn't want to hang out with them, is an important thing. And then you really gotta, especially in the early days, you gotta hire people that have a chip on their shoulder in the way that they want to show that there's something about them to the world, and the business is the way that they are going to be able to do that. So what I mean by that is, like, they have an itch that they're trying to scratch, and they want to prove success, and they are going to prove it in such a way that your business is the thing that answers that question. And so for me, with building GreenPal, we look for engineers and developers and content designers that really want to be part of something big. Maybe the last 2 projects they were part of failed, or they've never been a part of something that hundreds of thousands and millions of people will use. And so they want to be part of something big. That's just who they are. It's maybe they were picked on in high school or something, and they want to prove it to the world. And so, come join our rocket ship. That's how we think about it. So I look for people that are kind of cut from the same cloth as me. And then when I got it wrong, I fix it quickly, and I help them get a job somewhere else. Because once you make a couple bad hires, that cancer grows, and you'll wake up one day, you'll be driving to your office or your business, and you'll have a knot in your stomach. You don't want to go there, and be scared of that moment, because it's a tough thing to fix. I've had that happen a few times. So try to prevent it.
All right. Excellent. So, we've got other questions and comments, and we appreciate everybody's, but unfortunately, we can't stay here with you all night. But before we do go, just like to ask Bryan to share 3 key things that people should take away from our conversation tonight. most people can't really remember more than 3 things anyways. But, if you were to only do 3 things that we talked about, what would they be? I'll give you a second to think about it, but definitely if you could share that before we close out, that would be tremendous. So I'll play
Yeah.
Oh, unless you're ready now.
Yeah. For me, I would just double down on the 3 buckets.
Okay.
And so you really, as the founder, you need to set aside time during the week to do those 3 things. And they are in the business, on the business, and on yourself. So for me, when I was starting my landscaping business, I said, okay, Monday through Friday is in the business. And I am just all over everything all the time. And I am calling customers back, answering emails, paying bills, I'm making sure there's enough money in the bank to pay employees. I'm working in the business. A lot of founders think that that's all there is to do, and they get stuck there. But no, you have to set aside time on a weekly basis for the other 2 things, the other 2 buckets. So Saturdays were for me were for on the business. Okay, what's the biggest problem the business is facing this week? Okay, we have a lot of employee turnover. Okay, so let's create a system that keeps employees happy. Maybe we're checking in with them on a monthly basis, making sure they're happy, or we're doing a weekly scan of the marketplace, making sure our pay is competitive, or we're doing an employee training program to make them more valuable to the company and to themselves. What is the repeatable system that we're building that solves that problem? And then the third thing is working on yourself. It's a lot of times it's block and tackling. It's like, okay, I'm having a tough time with cash flow right now. So what is going on? And I need to take some courses on accounting. I need to take some courses on financial modeling. With YouTube, you can learn anything. You go to YouTube University and you take courses on what is it that you're deficient at as the founder. You have to work on yourself. And then holding yourself accountable to grow those buckets to where you're spending less time in it and more time on yourself and more time on the business. Those are the 3 main takeaways. Those 3 buckets is what I would think about.
Great. Well, definitely appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share that with us tonight. It's been tremendous. The 3 key things, working on your business, working in your business, and on yourself. Like you said, being a business owner is not easy. And, if you had a job, you'd really only have to do one of those things. But, you learn more in a year as a business owner than you probably learn in 10 years on a job.
That's right.
So, if you're the type of person that's ready and it's the right time in your life that, you're ready to step in to business, the entrepreneurship, it's tremendous. But, if you're not, it's not for the weak at heart. You definitely have to have a level of commitment that's way beyond any type of job. So excellent. So, Bryan, we've got your LinkedIn profile in the chat. We also have your website in the chat. So, everybody who's tuned in, if you want to learn more about Bryan, if you want to connect with them, you've got the resources to do that. Anything you want to share before we close out, Bryan?
Yeah, I think now is the best time that I've seen in 30 years of business to start a business with what's going on with AI. New businesses, new industries are going to be made. So get in the game. It's not too late. There's new opportunities being made every single day. Dedicate a decade to a good idea, and you'll be glad you did it.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much. If you could hang out for a minute, I'm just going to close things out, and we'll go from there. Okay, excellent. So, once again, always appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks again for all the great questions. And, thanks to Bryan for really sharing some tremendous insights, not just from things he's heard about or read about or thought about, but things that he's actually done. And, it's important to learn from those types of people. So that's what really Small Business Pro University is really all about. As you know, each week we have tremendous guests, and next week our guest is not Bryan. Bryan's this week. So next week we got Lauren Stickstein, and we're going to talk about real estate 101 for small business owners. Very important. A lot of business owners hurt themselves going into the wrong type of lease or not negotiating their lease the right way. Understanding real estate is a very important part if you're going to grow your business. So having someone who's an expert that works with business owners and businesses to negotiate and make sure they get the right location with the right lease and situation is critical. So he's going to share some great insights. So hopefully you can join us. And, always at the end of the day, the more that you know, the faster and more successfully your business is going to grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.